Commander Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Vengeance, watching the stars through the massive viewing window. The ship was humanity's newest and most powerful warship, built with the best technology Earth could produce. Jake had served in the human fleet for 15 years, but he had never seen anything like this vessel. Its weapons could destroy entire cities, and its armor could withstand attacks that would tear apart older ships. The bridge was quiet except for the soft hum of computers and the occasional beep from the control panels. Lieutenant Lisa Barnes sat at the communications station, monitoring signals from across the galaxy. She was young but skilled, one of the best communication officers in the fleet. Captain Paul Edwards walked between the stations, checking on his crew. He was a good captain, the kind of man who cared about his people and never asked them to do something he wouldn't do himself. Suddenly, Lisa's station began beeping rapidly. She put her hand to her earpiece and frowned. "Commander, I'm picking up a distress signal. It's coming from the Kepler 442 system." Jake walked over to her station. "Can you clean it up?" Lisa's fingers moved quickly across her controls. "Working on it, sir. The signal is weak and broken up. It's definitely alien, but I can't make out the words yet." Captain Edwards joined them. "How far is Kepler 442 from here?" "About 6 light years, sir," Lisa replied. "It's in the Outer Rim territories?" Jake felt his stomach tighten. The Outer Rim was where many of humanity's new alien friends lived. 3 years ago, Earth had made contact with several peaceful species in that region. They had become good trading partners and had helped humanity establish new colonies. If someone was in trouble out there, it could mean serious problems for everyone. "I've got it," Lisa said suddenly. "The message is from the Zilani." Jake's blood ran cold. The Zilani were gentle creatures who looked like tall, thin humans with blue skin and large eyes. They had been the first aliens to welcome humanity with open arms. Their homeworld was beautiful, covered in crystal cities and floating gardens. More importantly, they had shared their farming technology with Earth, helping to end hunger on many human colonies. "Play it," Captain Edwards ordered. The message crackled through the bridge speakers. The voice was high and scared, speaking in broken English. "Human friends, please help us. The Korath have come. Our ships are destroyed. Our cities are burning. We have maybe 3 days before they land their armies. Please, we need help. The children are crying. The old ones are dying. Please come quickly." The bridge fell silent. Jake had met Korath warriors before, and they were nothing like the peaceful Zilani. The Korath were tall, muscled creatures with gray skin and sharp teeth. They believed that only the strong deserved to live, and they had been conquering worlds for hundreds of years. They showed no mercy to anyone who couldn't fight back. "Get me Admiral Clark," Captain Edwards said quietly. Lisa worked her controls again. Within minutes, the face of Admiral Ryan Clark appeared on the main screen. He was an older man with gray hair and tired eyes, but he was also one of the smartest military leaders humanity had ever produced. He commanded the Third Fleet from his flagship, the UES Retribution. "Admiral, we've received a distress call from the Zilani homeworld," Captain Edwards reported. "The Korath Empire is attacking them." Admiral Clark's expression darkened. "How bad is it?" "Their defense fleet is gone, sir. They're estimating 72 hours before total occupation." The Admiral was quiet for a long moment. Jake could see him thinking, weighing options. Finally, he spoke. "The Zilani are under our protection. We made that clear when we signed the trade agreements. Send me everything you have on the situation." Lisa transmitted the data quickly. As Admiral Clark reviewed it, Jake thought about what this meant. The Zilani had never hurt anyone. They were farmers and artists, not warriors. They had trusted humanity to protect them, and now that trust was being tested. "I'm calling an emergency session of the Defense Council," Admiral Clark announced. "All fleet commanders are to report to Earth Command within the hour. We're going to discuss our response." Jake knew what that meant. The Human Defense Council only met for the most serious threats. It was made up of the top military leaders from Earth and all the human colonies. When they made a decision, it was final. The transmission ended, and the bridge crew looked at each other. They all knew the Zilani personally. Many of them had visited the alien homeworld during shore leave. They had eaten Zilani food, listened to Zilani music, and made friends with Zilani families. What do you think they'll decide? Lisa asked quietly. Captain Edwards looked out at the stars. The Korath made a mistake. They think they can attack our friends, and we'll just watch. They don't understand humans very well, Jake nodded. Humanity had learned hard lessons on Earth. Their homeworld was dangerous, with deadly storms, poisonous animals, and natural disasters that could kill millions. Other species in the galaxy lived on gentle worlds where the biggest threat was a mild rainstorm. They called Earth a death world, because most aliens couldn't survive there for more than a few days. But that dangerous world had made humans tough. They didn't give up when things got hard. They didn't abandon their friends when trouble came. And they definitely didn't let bullies hurt innocent people. Lisa, send a message to the Zilani, Jake ordered. Tell them help is coming. Tell them to hold on. As Lisa worked, Jake stared out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Korath were probably celebrating their easy victory. They thought they were fighting farmers and artists. They had no idea they were about to face the children of a death world, and those children were very, very angry. The emergency meeting of the Human Defense Council lasted exactly 47 minutes. Jake Morrison watched the live feed from the bridge of the UES. Vengeance, as the most powerful people in human space, made their decision. Admiral Clark sat at the head of the table, surrounded by fleet commanders, colony governors, and military advisors. The vote is unanimous, Admiral Clark announced to the camera. We will respond with full military force. The Korath Empire has attacked civilians. Under our protection, this will not stand. Jake felt a surge of pride mixed with worry. He was proud that humanity would keep its promise to protect the Zilani, but he was worried about what this meant. The Korath Empire was huge, with thousands of ships and warriors, spread across dozens of worlds. This wasn't going to be a small fight. Within 6 hours, the largest military movement in human history began. Admiral Clark's Third Fleet was already the strongest force in human space, but it wouldn't be enough. The Second Fleet, commanded by Admiral Michelle Davis, received orders to join them. The Fourth Fleet under Admiral Kevin Turner was also called up. Even the First Fleet, Earth's ultimate defense, would send half its ships under Vice Admiral Danny Cooper. Jake had never seen so many ships moving at once. The space around Earth looked like a metal storm as hundreds of vessels prepared for war. Battleships, cruisers, destroyers, and support ships all moved in careful formations. The sight was both beautiful and terrifying. Captain Amy Rodriguez commanded the carrier U.S. Devastator, one of the largest ships in the fleet. Her job was to manage the fighter squadrons that would protect the bigger ships during battle. She stood in the launch bay, watching her pilots prepare their small, fast ships for combat. Squadron leader Tony Martinez walked up to her. He was young but experienced, having fought in 3 major battles against space pirates. His pilots trusted him completely. Ma'am, the fighters are ready. We've loaded the new armor-piercing rockets you requested. Amy nodded. Good. The Korath use energy shields that can stop most weapons, but these new rockets should punch right through. Make sure your pilots understand that speed is everything. Get in, hit hard, and get out. Tony saluted. Yes, ma'am. We won't let you down. In another part of the fleet, Colonel Steve Johnson was preparing his Marines for a different kind of fight. His ship, the used Warhammer, was designed for one purpose: getting soldiers onto enemy ships. The Marines were loading special equipment designed for boarding actions. Steve had fought in the Titan Rebellion 5 years ago, when miners on Saturn's moon had tried to break away from Earth. That fight had been brutal, with combat in narrow tunnels and low gravity. His Marines had learned to fight in any environment, and they were ready for whatever the Korath could throw at them. Listen up, Steve told his troops as they checked their weapons. The Korath are tough, but they're not used to fighting humans. They expect their enemies to be scared and run away. We're going to show them what a big mistake that is. The Marines cheered. They had all volunteered for this mission. Many of them had friends among the Zilani, and they were angry about the attack on innocent people. Dr. Helen Wright worked in the science section of the flagship. studying everything humanity knew about Korath technology. She was a small woman with thick glasses, but her mind was one of the sharpest in the fleet. She had been working for 3 days straight, trying to find weaknesses in the enemy's defenses. "I think I've found something," she told Admiral Clark, over the communication system. "The Korath shields are designed to stop energy weapons like lasers and plasma cannons, but they're not very good against solid objects moving at high speed." Admiral Clark leaned forward. "Explain. Human weapons are different from what most aliens use," Helen continued. "We still use kinetic weapons, bullets, shells, and missiles that physically hit the target. Our railguns can fire metal slugs at incredible speeds. The Korath shields might not be able to stop them." This was excellent news. Every human ship carried kinetic weapons alongside their energy guns. If the Korath couldn't defend against them, the human fleet would have a huge advantage. As the fleet prepared to leave, Jake thought about what made human ships different from alien vessels. Most other species built ships for specific jobs. A battleship was only for fighting other big ships. A transport only carried supplies. A science vessel only did research, but human ships were different. They were designed to do many things at once. The U's Vengeance was officially a battleship, but it could also carry fighters, transport marines, or serve as a command ship. This flexibility came from humanity's experience on Earth, where people had to be ready for anything. The final preparations took another 6 hours. Fuel tanks were filled, weapons were checked, and food supplies were loaded. The fleet would be gone for weeks, maybe months, depending on how the war went. Jake stood on the bridge as the fleet prepared to jump to hyperspace. Around him, hundreds of ships waited for the order to move. Each ship carried brave men and women who were willing to risk their lives for people they barely knew. "All ships report ready," Lisa announced from her station. Admiral Clark's voice came over the communication system, speaking to the entire fleet. "Today we keep our promise to our friends. Today we show the galaxy that humanity stands by its word. Today we remind everyone why Earth is called a death world." The stars stretched into lines of light as the fleet jumped to hyperspace. They were going to war, and they were going to win. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 442 system and found hell waiting for them. Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Vengeance, staring at the horrific scene before them. The Korath had brought their entire 6th Armada to destroy the Zilani homeworld. Over 400 enemy ships surrounded the beautiful blue planet like a swarm of angry insects. "My God," Captain Edwards whispered beside him. "Look what they've done." Jake could see the orbital bombardment in progress. Bright flashes of light appeared on the planet's surface as Korath weapons struck cities and farms. The planet's protective satellites were gone, destroyed in the first wave of attacks. Pieces of broken metal drifted through space like a graveyard of dreams. "Communications, can you reach the surface?" Jake asked. Lisa Barnes worked frantically at her station. "I'm trying, sir. The Korath are jamming most frequencies, but I might be able to get through on the emergency channels." After several minutes, she succeeded. The voice that came through was weak and filled with pain. "Human friends, is that you? Please tell us you are here to help." Jake took the microphone. "This is Commander Morrison of the human fleet. We're here, and we're going to get you out of this." "Thank you," the voice replied. "The Korath landed army 6 hours ago. They are destroying everything. The children are hiding in the underground shelters, but I do not know how long we can hold." Jake felt anger burning in his chest. The Korath weren't just conquering the Zilani. They were trying to wipe them out completely. This wasn't war. This was murder. Admiral Clark's voice came over the fleet communication system. "All ships, this is Admiral Clark. We can see the situation. The Korath have positioned their fleet in a defensive sphere around the planet. They're using their numbers to create overlapping fields of fire. Any ship that tries to reach the planet will be destroyed." Jake studied the enemy formation on his tactical display. The Korath had placed their biggest ships in the center, with smaller vessels spread out in layers around them. It was a smart defensive position, but it had one weakness. The Korath commanders were thinking like most alien races. They expected their enemies to be careful and avoid taking risks. They had never fought humans before. "Launch all fighters," Admiral Clark ordered. "Begin hit-and-run attacks on their outer perimeter." Captain Rodriguez received the order on her carrier. "You heard the Admiral," she told Tony Martinez. "Take your squadrons and show them what human pilots can do." Tony grinned as he climbed into his fighter. "Yes, ma'am." Time to introduce the Korath to Earth-style flying. The human fighters launched in waves, their small engines burning bright against the darkness of space. Tony led his squadron straight at the nearest Korath destroyer, flying in a pattern that would have been impossible for most alien pilots. He rolled his fighter sideways, diving under the enemy's guns, then pulled up sharply to fire his armor-piercing rockets. The Korath ship tried to track him, but its weapons were designed for fighting other big ships. The alien gunners couldn't keep up with Tony's wild flying. His rockets punched through the enemy's shields and tore holes in their hull. "That's one down," Tony reported as the Korath destroyer exploded behind him. "Moving to the next target." All across the battle zone, human fighters were dancing between the enemy ships like deadly butterflies. The Korath had never seen anything like it. Their own fighters were built for straight-line attacks. Not the crazy spinning and diving that human pilots loved, but the real shock came when Captain Edwards took the UES Vengeance directly into the heart of the enemy formation. Most alien commanders would have stayed back and fired from a safe distance. Edwards did the opposite. He drove his battleship straight at the biggest Korath vessels, his guns blazing. "All weapons, focus fire on that command ship," Edwards ordered. "Let's see how well their shields handle our railguns." The Vengeance's main guns fired solid metal slugs, the size of small cars. Dr. Wright had been right about the Korath shields. They were designed to stop energy weapons, not physical objects, moving at incredible speeds. The human projectiles punched through the alien defenses like paper. The Korath flagship shuddered as the railgun slugs tore through its hull. Explosions bloomed along its sides as internal systems failed. The alien captain tried to return fire, but the Vengeance's armor was built to survive asteroid impacts. The Korath energy beams barely scratched the human ship's surface. "Their shields are down," Jake reported. "Colonel Johnson, you're clear for boarding." Colonel Johnson had been waiting for this moment. His Marines were loaded into special assault pods, small armored vehicles designed to punch through enemy ship hulls. "Marines, remember your training. These aliens are tough, but they're not used to fighting in close quarters. Stay together. Watch each other's backs and show them what Earth soldiers can do." The boarding pods launched from the U's Warhammer, flying across the space between the ships like bullets. They slammed into the Korath flagship's hull and began cutting through the metal with plasma torches. Within minutes, Johnson's Marines were inside the enemy vessel. The Korath warriors were big and strong, but they fought with energy weapons and expected their enemies to do the same. The Marines carried shotguns, assault rifles, and grenades. When a Korath warrior raised his energy shield to block a laser blast, he was completely surprised when a human bullet punched right through it. "Deck by deck," Johnson ordered his troops. "Clear every room. We need to capture their command center." The fighting inside the ship was brutal but brief. The Korath were brave, but they had never faced enemies who specialized in close combat. Human soldiers had trained for this kind of fighting since they were children, playing games that taught them to think fast and move quickly. Within 30 minutes, Johnson's team had reached the enemy bridge. The Korath captain was a huge creature, with gray skin and sharp teeth, but he looked scared as the Marines surrounded him. "Surrender," Johnson said simply. "Order your fleet to stop attacking the planet and we'll let you live." The Korath captain looked around at his destroyed bridge and his dead crew. He had thought this would be an easy conquest. Instead, he had run into something the galaxy had never seen before: humans who refused to back down from a fight. "I surrender," he said quietly. The news of the human victory at Kepler 442 spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Vengeance, reading reports from intelligence agents throughout known space. Every alien government was talking about what had happened. The Korath Sixth Armada, one of the most feared military forces in the galaxy, had been completely destroyed in 14 hours. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from Earth Command," Lisa Barnes announced from her station. "Admiral." Clark's face appeared on the main screen. Behind him, Jake could see the busy operations center of the fleet headquarters. "Congratulations on the victory, Commander. But this is just the beginning. The Korath Empire has over 20 fleets spread across their territory. If we let them regroup, they'll come back stronger," Jake nodded. He had been thinking the same thing. The Korath weren't the type to give up after one defeat. They would gather their remaining forces and strike back, probably at human colonies this time. "What are our orders, Admiral?" Captain Edwards asked. "We're going to finish this," Clark replied. "Earth Command has authorized a full military campaign against the Korath Empire. We're going to hunt down every one of their fleets and destroy their ability to make war." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. This wasn't just about protecting the Zilani anymore. Humanity was going to war against an entire galactic empire. It was the biggest military operation in human history. Over the next 3 days, more human ships arrived at Kepler 442. Admiral Michelle Davis brought the Second Fleet, adding another 100 vessels to the growing armada. Admiral Kevin Turner's Fourth Fleet arrived shortly after. Even civilian ships were pressed into service, carrying supplies and spare parts for the military vessels. Captain Amy Rodriguez found herself in command of a task force of 6 carriers. Her fighters, led by Tony Martinez, had become famous throughout the fleet for their performance in the battle. Now they were being assigned to hunt down Korath patrol ships and scouts. "The enemy is trying to figure out what happened here," Rodriguez explained to her squadron leaders. "They're sending small ships to investigate. We need to make sure none of them get back to report what they've seen." Tony understood. "You want us to cut off their information, make them fight blind." "Exactly. The Korath have been winning because they always knew where their enemies were and what they were planning. We're going to change that." Meanwhile, Colonel Steve Johnson was training his Marines for a different kind of mission. Intelligence reports showed that the Korath Empire had several major shipyards and weapons factories. Johnson's job was to capture or destroy these facilities. "The Korath build their ships in orbital stations around gas giant planets," he told his troops. "These stations are heavily defended, but they're also the key to their military power. If we can knock them out, the Korath won't be able to replace their losses." The Marines were excited about the challenge. They had proven themselves in ship-to-ship combat, but assaulting space stations would be even more dangerous. The Korath would have time to prepare their defenses and set up ambush. Dr. Helen Wright was working on new weapons and tactics for the campaign. Her analysis of captured Korath technology had revealed several weaknesses that could be exploited. She had developed new types of ammunition that could penetrate Korath armor, and she was working on electronic warfare systems that could disrupt their communications. "The Korath rely heavily on their command structure," she explained to Admiral Clark. "Their soldiers are trained to follow orders without question. If we can cut their communications, their forces will become confused and disorganized." The first target of the human campaign was a Korath supply depot in the Sigma Draconis system. The depot was lightly defended, with only a few patrol ships and a small garrison. Admiral Clark decided to use it as a test of the new tactics. Captain Edwards took the UES Vengeance and 3 other ships to attack the depot. As they approached the system, they found exactly what intelligence had predicted. The Korath had built a massive storage facility on a small moon, surrounded by defensive platforms and patrol ships. "Remember, we want to capture as much as possible," Edwards told his crew. "Destroying their supplies hurts them, but capturing their supplies helps us." The attack began with Tony Martinez's fighters disabling the defensive platforms. The Korath gunners tried to track the fast-moving human ships, but they were using the same tactics that had worked so well in the previous battle. The alien weapons simply couldn't keep up with the unpredictable flight patterns. Once the defenses were down, Johnson's Marines landed on the moon's surface. The Korath garrison fought bravely, but they were outnumbered and outgunned. The human soldiers moved through the storage tunnels like ghosts, using their knowledge of close-quarters combat to defeat enemies who preferred to fight at long range. "Depot secured," Johnson reported after 2 hours of fighting. "We've captured enough supplies to feed our fleet for a month, plus weapons and spare parts." The victory at Sigma Draconis was followed by attacks on 3 more supply depots. Each time, the human forces learned something new about Korath tactics and technology. More importantly, they were cutting off the resources the enemy needed to continue fighting, but the real test came when the humans attacked their first major Korath fleet. The enemy's 9th Armada was stationed at a fortress system called Korath Station. Protecting one of the Empire's most important shipyards, Admiral Clark led the assault personally, bringing over 200 human ships against 300 Korath vessels. The battle lasted 6 hours and was visible from several light-years away. When it was over, the Korath 9th Armada had been destroyed, and their shipyard was in human hands. The Korath Emperor Vexstar sent a message from his throne world demanding negotiations. He offered tribute, territory, and trade agreements in exchange for peace. The message was broadcast throughout the galaxy, so everyone could hear humanity's response. Jake Morrison, now promoted to Admiral, delivered the human reply. His words were recorded and sent to every inhabited world in known space. "You attacked civilians under our protection," Morrison said, looking directly into the camera. "You showed no mercy to innocent people. You will receive exactly the same consideration you gave them." The message was clear. Humanity was not interested in negotiations. They were going to finish what the Korath had started, and they were going to win. 6 months after the first distress signal from the Zilani, Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Vengeance, watching the final battle of the war. Below them, the planet Korath Prime burned under human bombardment. The Korath Empire's capital world was surrounded by the largest human fleet ever assembled. Over 500 ships from every corner of human space. The siege had lasted 3 weeks. The planet's orbital defenses, built over centuries and considered unbreakable by galactic standards, lay in ruins around the world. Human artillery ships had positioned themselves beyond the range of the enemy's weapons and systematically destroyed every defensive platform, every orbital fortress, and every military satellite. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the planet," Lisa Barnes reported from her communications station. She had been promoted to lieutenant commander after her excellent work during the campaign. "Put it through," Morrison ordered. The face that appeared on the screen belonged to General Thakmar, the Korath military commander. His gray skin looked pale, and his usually fierce eyes showed defeat. Behind him, Morrison could see the ruins of what had once been the Empire's military headquarters. "Admiral Morrison," the Korath general said slowly, "I am authorized by Emperor Vexstar to offer the surrender of all Korath military forces. We request terms." Morrison looked at the alien commander for a long moment. 6 months ago, this same general had been planning the complete destruction of the Zilani homeworld. His forces had killed thousands of innocent civilians and would have killed millions more if humanity hadn't intervened. "Unconditional surrender?" Morrison replied. "All Korath military forces will lay down their weapons immediately. All occupied worlds will be returned to their original inhabitants. War criminals will be turned over for trial." General Thakmar's face showed surprise. Most galactic conquerors offered generous terms to defeated enemies, hoping to avoid future rebellions. But humans apparently had different ideas about justice, and if we refuse? The general asked. Morrison gestured toward the window, where the orbital bombardment continued. "Then we continue this conversation after we've finished reducing your military capability to 0. The general was quiet for several minutes. Finally he nodded. "We accept your terms." The end of the Korath Empire came not with a great battle, but with a simple signature on a surrender document. Within hours, Korath forces throughout the galaxy were laying down their weapons and returning to their home systems. The age of Korath expansion was over. Captain Amy Rodriguez stood in the hangar bay of her carrier, watching as Tony Martinez and his pilots returned from their final mission. They had been escorting transport ships carrying supplies to liberated worlds. The young squadron leader looked tired but satisfied. "How are the former prisoners?" Rodriguez asked. "Happy to be free," Tony replied. "You should see some of these worlds, Captain." The Korath had turned entire planets into slave camps. The people there hadn't seen sunlight in years. Rodriguez nodded. The liberation of the Korath subject worlds had revealed the true horror of their empire. Dozens of species had been enslaved, their worlds stripped of resources, their populations forced to work in terrible conditions. Some worlds had been so damaged that it would take decades to restore them. Colonel Steve Johnson was on one of those worlds now, helping to establish the new Galactic Peacekeeping Force. His Marines were training soldiers from the liberated species, teaching them how to defend themselves and their neighbors. The program emphasized the protection of civilians and the importance of standing up to bullies. "The key is to never let this happen again," Johnson told his new recruits. "We can't be everywhere at once, but we can make sure that every world has the ability to defend itself and call for help when needed." Dr. Helen Wright had returned to Earth to work on new technologies for the peacekeeping effort. Her research into Korath weapons had led to breakthroughs in defensive systems that could protect civilian populations from orbital bombardment. She was also developing communication systems that would allow any world to call for help instantly. "The galaxy is changing," she told her research team. "For the first time in centuries, the small and peaceful species don't have to live in fear. But that also means we have a responsibility to make sure things stay that way." The political changes were just as dramatic as the military ones. The Galactic Council, which had been powerless to stop aggressive empires like the Korath, was restructured with humanity taking a leading role. The Human Defense Coalition grew to include over 50 species, all united by the principle that aggression against civilians would not be tolerated. Admiral Clark established new fleet bases throughout the galaxy, positioned to respond quickly to any threats. Human ships patrolled former Korath space, making sure that no new empire could rise to fill the power vacuum. The patrols were welcomed by local populations who had lived under Korath rule for generations. Morrison found himself appointed as the first director of galactic security, responsible for coordinating the defense of all peaceful species. It was a job he had never wanted, but one that suited his talents perfectly. The anniversary of the Kepler 442 battle became a galactic holiday, celebrated on worlds throughout known space. Morrison was asked to give a speech to the Galactic Council, which was broadcast to every inhabited planet. "1 year ago, we received a call for help from our friends," Morrison began, standing before representatives from hundreds of worlds. "Today I want to talk about what we learned from that experience." He paused, looking out at the diverse crowd of aliens who had gathered to hear him speak. "Humanity came from a dangerous world that tried to kill us every day. We learned that survival requires strength, but more importantly, we learned that civilization requires the willingness to use that strength to protect others. We will not tolerate aggression against innocent people. We will not abandon our allies. And we will not hesitate to remind anyone who threatens the peace exactly why Earth is called a death world." The applause lasted for several minutes. When it finally died down, Morrison continued, "The age of conquest is over. The age of cooperation has begun. And anyone who tries to return to the old ways will discover that the children of Earth have very long memories and very little patience for bullies." As Morrison finished his speech, he thought about how much had changed in just 1 year. The galaxy was safer, more peaceful, and more united than it had ever been. The Zilani were rebuilding their world with human help. Former Korath slave worlds were becoming free and prosperous. And throughout known space, the weak no longer had to fear the strong. Peace, it turned out, was something that humans were very good at enforcing.